Hello, you are watching and listening to another Scoutcast from fantasyfootballscout.co.uk. My name is Joe.
My name is David.
So, after looking at the World Cup fantasy games earlier this week, we're going to turn our attention to domestic matters. So we're looking ahead to the Premier League 2018-19 season because today the fixtures have just come out. So we've had just enough time to gather our early thoughts about that. So this gives us a chance to have a look at some early teams to consider investing in and definitely those to avoid in. So one of the things we'll do is really focus on those kind of first 4 to 6 week fixtures so we can get some early ideas together about the kinds of teams and the kind of players we want. We're also going to have a look at some possible cheap rotation pairings, very quick look at Christmas as well to get some really early planning in then, and also a few words of caution about game week 1. So David, now you've had a chance to have a look at the fixtures here. So looking at the early on, the kind of the first few game weeks, really, what teams look like the ones to invest in and which should we be avoiding?
Well, I think the thing that really stands out straight off is that Man City have a really great set of fixtures in the first 6 weeks. I mean, they're a kind of team that we would probably want to invest in anyway. But when their first 6 fixtures are Arsenal away, obviously they won 3-0 there last season. Then the next 6 games that they play, all 6 of those teams are the 6 most recently promoted teams. So it's the 3 newly promoted teams from last season's championship, and then the 3 teams that were promoted from the championship before then. So it's Huddersfield at home, then Wolves away, Newcastle at home, Fulham at home, Cardiff away, Brighton at home, and they're just the kind of fixtures that you expect Man City to absolutely race into 3 or 4-0 results in. So I mean, you know, already at this stage, where we all talked about Leroy Sané not going to the World Cup and maybe being fresh for game week 1, then you know Sané's appeal for the beginning of the season has just gone up even more when you look at those fixtures. Of course, obviously, you know, we still maybe want to look at Sterling, Aguero or Jesus if one of them becomes clear as a sure starter, you know, Kevin De Bruyne and David Silva. So those sorts of players are already now firmly on people's radars with those fixtures. But it's not just Man City. I mean, in some of the smaller clubs, so Everton, for example, they are actually top of the season ticker right now on the website. Their first 5 fixtures are it's Wolves away, Southampton at home, Bournemouth away, Huddersfield at home, West Ham at home. So they're really nice fixtures as well. Yeah, obviously, we don't know exactly too much of what their team's going to look like just yet, but also we've got a new manager. But, you know, being aware of those fixtures is nice. Also, Southampton as well, they've got some nice fixtures. They've got Burnley, Leicester, Brighton at home in the first 5 game weeks, and they're nice fixtures for them as well, I think.
Yeah, that'll be an interesting one because Southampton, a lot of us were caught out this time last season. We looked at Southampton's fixtures, same thing, and it was like, oh wow, they were really good. So there I was loading up on my Southampton players, and they were absolutely awful. So I'll be expecting more from them. Liverpool, now that's an interesting one. They've got really good fixtures, and Mo Salah. Now we don't know what price is going to come in, but it's going to be huge. Yeah. So it would have been lovely if Liverpool's fixtures were awful, but they're not. Yeah. So, yeah, who have Liverpool got then early on?
Yeah, so it's West Ham in the opening game week, which is just that just looks like a captain Salah if he's going to be fit and affordable straight off the bat. I think West Ham conceded more away goals last year than any other team, so I mean that's a great one to look at. Then Palace away, you know, another team you don't keep clean sheets. Then it's Brighton at home, Leicester away, and then 2 home games against Spurs and Southampton. So I think the only fixture really in there that's tricky is the Spurs game at home. But I mean, as we saw last season, you know, they could still, you know, score goals in that fixture. So, I mean, again, we don't know what prices their players are going to be. I mean, Firmino is obviously going to be more expensive than he was last year. You know, they may have to be, people may find that they might have to pick between Man City and Liverpool assets, which might be quite tricky, of course, depending on the price. So, yeah, as you say, it would have been really nice if they had hard fixtures because they're going to be really expensive.
Now, another kind of heavyweight premium player that people might be considering avoiding is Harry Kane. He has a thing about August, as we know. Yeah. Simply can't score in the league during August. And he's got a very similar start as well. He's got Newcastle away, which was the same as last time. He did absolutely nothing. Then Fulham at home. Now, I like that fixture, but we never know. And will they be at home? Where will their home be? Will it be the new stadium? Will they still be kind of catching a lift off Wembley? Manchester United away, that looks awful for Harry Kane there. And then we start moving, we can start moving into September, really. Watford away, Liverpool at home, and Brighton away. Now, these are fixtures he should do well in. That fixture list there, and because of what we know about Harry Kane, I'm thinking if I'm going to have Mo Salah, I don't think I'm going to be able to afford Harry Kane as well. I don't know what his price is going to be. It's going to be big, though. So I'm thinking of. I mean, what's your take on that? Looking at the fixtures there, do you think? I think I might give Kane a wide berth, or is he a bit of a must for you?
Yeah, no, I'm more inclined to say that I think I'm going to seriously consider his place in my team. I mean, we're going to talk a little bit later about mistakes that we've made in early game weeks in the past, and looking back, I mean, I have to say that being so insistent that we have Kane in our team from the start was a mistake, because I always said, oh, the goals will come even if they don't come in August, but it is such a big issue when you've got such a high value player not performing. And as you mentioned, with some of those fixtures are difficult, as well as it being in August as well. So especially with Man City as well, I mean, you can't ignore Man City's fixtures, and as we've just said, you can't really ignore Liverpool's either. If you're trying to balance some high value assets, then someone like Sane or Sterling or Aguero or Jesus, or some of your Liverpool players, they're gonna be more essential to the team, at least in the beginning, than Kane. So yeah, certainly I wouldn't say he's a must-have at the beginning.
There's another issue I'm interested in, the early fixtures as well. Something I always have a look at is I start off the season by thinking, right, when am I going to wild card? And you obviously want to keep it for as long as possible. But sometimes an early wild card can be taking advantage of a good situation. It might be that your team's already doing well. So game week 4, there's an international break. After that, and so that's a popular time to do it, and it's a time when traditionally myself and many others have thought about doing it then. But I often try and do it if there's a notable fixture swing, and something I noticed this time around, I don't think there's a significant fixture swing. So if my team's in okay shape, I don't know if I'll be, based on these fixtures, I don't know if I'll be wildcarding that early on. So game weeks 1 to 4, as you have already mentioned, Everton, Liverpool, really good fixtures, but also Palace and Burnley and Manchester United have really good fixtures. So we go forwards to game weeks 5 to 8. So this is when you've got the international break. You're looking at the next 4 fixtures then. Well, Burnley again, Palace again, Manchester United again. So you've got cheap options there, some mid-priced options, and you've got a premium option there. Man City continue to have good fixtures as well. Tottenham's get better. So I think the big thing there would be perhaps looking at getting Harry Kane in, particularly for that for those fixtures there. Particularly, is it Watford? Just looking at getting Spurs in there, because I just think they've got some really good fixtures coming up in September, really. But I'm not sure. Other people might have a look at it. I do urge people to have a look on the site, have a look at the season ticker that we've got on our homepage. And if they're members as well, have a real play around, because you've got the whole season's ticker there. And people can come up with their own opinion about that. But for me, I don't think there's a significant swing, really. Man City's still good. United's still good. It's just Tottenham get a bit better, and I reckon we can get Harry Kane in 1 or 2 moves there. So I don't know what your thought is. I don't know whether you wildcard early traditionally, or whether you look to this and whether it's given you any thoughts about wildcarding.
Yeah, I mean, I always look for some kind of swing, and as you mentioned, there isn't a particularly strong one this year. I seem to remember last year, I think game week 6, around that sort of time, teams like Everton and Arsenal, we noticed had a decent swing. But of course, obviously, when the season got underway, we noticed that Everton kind of weren't really worth investing in anyway. So that particular swing didn't really change too much for me. I think the same with Arsenal as well. So I mean, I guess, yeah, ideally it'd be nice to use my wild card in a situation where I can go from strength to strength. Start well and then maybe look for a swing of fixtures and then go from there. But some of it might come down to other factors that we just can't predict yet, I suppose. I mean, I used my wild card last year. Not based around fixtures changing, more just around the fact that my team had just kind of passed its sell-by date and needed freshening up. So, and that, I think for a lot of managers, that's sometimes where the change comes from, because you can put your plans in place looking at the fixtures now for your wild card, I should say. But there's lots of factors that will change that when the games actually start coming in. We've all sort of said before that game week 1 is difficult to choose a team in. Because it's the first game of the season. You never know what's going to happen, and a lot of that will probably have more impact on when I play my wildcard rather than the fixture list itself, I think.
There is another team that I wanted to mention, Arsenal, about, and that they could possibly persuade me. So their first fixtures are not so great. They got Man City Chelsea, and then but then they start getting better sort of game week 3. So I'm actually considering getting them from the off. And a bit controversial, I don't actually see City and Chelsea as tough fixtures for them. Now, a lot of people might, but I'm looking at things like the World Cup, what players they've got and what players they haven't got at the World Cup, more crucially. So Aubameyang, Lacazette, Ramsey, Bellerin, some of their key players there, they're just not going to be World Cup. They're going to be fresh as a daisy. Meanwhile, they'll be playing Man City, who have just come off the back of a champion Premier League winning season, and virtually all of their key stars are at the World Cup. So yes, Sané I like the look of, but I just wonder, you know, how fit and raring to go will Kevin De Bruyne be? I mean, he's not a robot, or perhaps he is a robot. So I just think that Chelsea are a bit of an unknown quantity at the moment as well. So they potentially may have a new manager, and once again, a lot of their key players, particularly Hazard, it could have quite a lengthy World Cup run with Belgium. We're not sure. So Arsenal team tentatively at the moment, because I've already got it in my head to get one of Aubameyang, Ramsey, one of those two, possibly both. I don't know. Maybe I'm kidding myself here. But what's your take on Arsenal? Do you look at those opening 2 fixtures, City, Chelsea, and just go, no way?
Well, I mean, initially, yeah, that was my initial thought when we first saw the fixtures this morning. And obviously, if you go on the ticker, they are near the bottom overall, because on paper, yes, Man City and Chelsea are difficult. But when you go sort of a bit deeper, as you've mentioned, I mean, we've got no idea what to expect from Chelsea. I think that in particular is, I mean, I'd be more worried for Arsenal in the Man City game than I would in the Chelsea game, because we have no idea what's going to happen. I mean, they could have a new manager, but alternatively, Conte could still be there, because, I mean, this idea that he's going to leave has been rumbling on for so long. And it could still be rumbling on then. And if that's the case, you know, if he's still there, the situation is not going to be perfect. You know, they're going to be an easy target. And yeah, the more you sort of look at the argument, as you've just gone through, that there's some real logic to that. I mean, the players that aren't going to the World Cup are players that we would be looking at anyway. If there was no World Cup on, to sort of make them stand out more by not being there. Everybody is looking at Aubameyang. I mean, that's what everybody was saying at the end of last season. Lacazette obviously started to develop a partnership with him as well, making him worth looking at. Ramsey when he's fit. Bellerin obviously has great goal threat. His positioning is fantastic. So even with the World Cup aside, I think those players, especially for those fixtures that come after it, I totally see that. But it can, as you say, it can be easy to begin with to look at those 2 fixtures at the start and kind of put your blinkers on. It just shows the value in kind of maybe sort of questioning a little bit more and going a bit deeper.
Well, yeah, we're going to come to in a mo looking at questioning how we address game week 1 and some of those kind of ideas that we go into the season with that we end up thinking, what was I thinking? But I just wanted to mention Christmases. Now, this is ultra early planning, really. So this is just something to just think about at the back of your mind, for people to think about at the back of their minds a little bit, really, because the Christmas fixture congestion is a big deal. It's a great time to really push up the rankings. It may be that people have saved a wild card for these matches. So you've got 4 matches essentially taking place in about 9-10 days. This is good news, especially if they can escape rotation. So looking at that, West Ham, Manchester United and Tottenham and Chelsea have got absolutely dream fixtures over that period. This is game weeks 18 to 21. Really early. I hesitate because I don't want people to get bogged down with too much early planning, but just keep it in mind that around that kind of Christmas time. So if you are going to wild card some point, kind of game week 8 or something like that, bear in mind that in a few game weeks after, up to Christmas Day, you're going to have to start thinking about perhaps making sure that you've got Manchester United defensive and attacking cover. That Harry Kane's probably in your team as well with Tottenham's fixtures over Christmas. He's also unlikely to be rotated as well, and West Ham as well. So if they're off to a flyer as well, they could be. Well, I'd say it's just something to consider there. But another thing, going back to more early fixtures, really looking at rotation pairs. Now there's one I noticed here. Which was Cardiff and Palace. I think looks quite good. So game weeks, so this is potentially getting a defender. So 2 cheap defenders in. a Palace and a Cardiff defender, and then you rotate them essentially. So this doesn't necessarily go home and away. I'm not so keen on the home and away. I'm just more looking at ease of fixtures. And the same thing with their goalies as well. So if they're priced at 4.5, so suddenly you've got two players, 4.5, play one of them, and then you're taking advantage of those good fixtures. So Cardiff, they start off with Bournemouth away, Newcastle at home, Huddersfield away. These are good fixtures. Then you want to switch your attention, put your Cardiff player back on the bench, and then move over to Palace because they've got Southampton at home, Huddersfield away, and then Newcastle as well. And then into game week 7 and 8, it carries on really. You can get, by having that combination there, you can field a player in one of those defensive slots. And looking at, so Palace have got Bournemouth and Wolves, which are both good, so you could possibly just keep going with your Palace player. But then Cardiff have Burnley at home, which is quite good before Spurs away, so it gets bad there. But you've got a bit of a choice there as well for the odd fixture there. So I don't know about you. Had you seen any other good potential rotation pairings for those that like to rotate their budget options at the back?
Yeah, obviously we've done a sort of a big analysis on the website today that people can go and have a look at. And the one that Neil's noticed that looks really, really nice is Bournemouth and Crystal Palace. So if you have one of each of those, as you say, and you rotate those throughout, you can get yourself a run of Cardiff at home, West Ham away, Everton at home, Southampton at home, Leicester at home, Newcastle at home, Palace at home, Wolves at home, Southampton at home, Fulham away, which is a really, really nice looking rotation. That's over 10 game weeks, I think. And to be honest, you can probably I think it'd be up to you whether or not you wanted to take that from either a defensive or attacking angle, because I think both of those teams have got attacking assets that would do well in those situations. So I mean, Ruben Loftus-Cheek could rotate quite nicely with Stanislas if you wanted, or alternatively you could rotate some defenders in there as well, because a lot of those teams are teams that are look all right for clean sheet potential. So that's the one that stands out most for me. I'd like to think that the players in those situations wouldn't be too expensive. I mean, Ruben Loftus-Cheek, I think, will be underpriced again this season because he just didn't quite have the... You
think he'll still be at Palace?
Oh, well, possibly. Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
It's possible. They might get him on loan again.
Yeah, I mean, or they might even get him on a permanent deal. I mean, I don't know. I mean, he did well there while he was there. Yeah, you made a good point, but I mean, there's other decent cut price people there, like Milivojevic, for example, on the penalties. So I mean, someone like him, I think, will be more expensive than he was last year, but still in an affordable bracket, I think. So
yeah, I mean, I like that pairing. I prefer to pair Bournemouth with Palace rather than Cardiff and Palace. That as a fan of Brighton in the lower leagues over the years, and it still rankles me a little bit having to get Palace players in. Well, I'm okay with that, but getting Cardiff players in as well, that's a bridge too far. So yeah, the option of getting a Bournemouth player, I'm hoping they're going to be a little underpriced, particularly in defence this year, because they were pretty dire actually last season. So I'm hoping that there's an upturn in fortunes for the Bournemouth defence. I like that one. I prefer that one. So yeah,
it runs on for so long. I think that's the great thing about it, is that for 10 weeks. I mean, that's 2 slots that you can fill quite nicely, provided injuries don't cause problems. So
another one I noticed, which could also go well for cheap attacking options, but also at the back as well, as Leicester Wolves looks pretty good actually. You can essentially, with that pairing there, so say someone like Chilwell comes in at 4.5 and starts, even at 5 it could be okay. So you pair him up with a Wolves defender, and you can have a nice run of Everton at home, Wolves at home, Southampton away, West Ham away. Then you've got a nice choice, Burnley at home or Bournemouth away, and then Huddersfield away, Huddersfield at home. And then you've got some more choices where they both got then good fixtures, keeping going then. I like that one as well. So I think it's quite good because it quite gives us a bit of chance when the game launches and we get the player prices in. And because I'm a bit dull, I'm not going to be looking at Salah and Kane. I'm going to be immediately looking at the Wolves defenders and the Leicester defenders and the Bournemouth defenders and hoping for the best there. I think now we should just turn to the thing about game week. We mentioned that we're going to look at this game week 1 pitfalls, really. You had quite a good start last season, I seem to remember.
Yeah.
You had a great game week 1. I had a fairly average game week 1. To be honest, over the last 10 seasons, average is quite good for me in game week 1. I often have an absolute stinker. I just get it wrong. So this time last season, I had a look at why I was getting it wrong. And it's because game week 1 is a really illogical game week. So I did some research really, looking at the common mistakes really. So I compared our scout picks for those weeks, for that game week 1, the previous 2 seasons, and looking at, so these are the players that you would assume would do well, and they didn't. And then looking at those that others. So one of the things is people look at the fixtures and they look at 2 attacking teams up against each other, and they think, I can't decide who's going to win this. I can't decide who's going to captain it, so I'm just going to avoid them. And that can be costly. So 2016-17, Arsenal played Liverpool. None of their players made the scout picks game week 1. Well, it was a 4-3 thriller, absolutely incredible. Similar happened with Leicester travel to Arsenal game week 1 last season, opening day season. Absolute goal fest. None of them made our scout picks. And also they weren't in many other teams as well. So it's a common mistake there. So I'm actually looking at Arsenal against Man City game week 1 as a potentially great match. These rested World Cupless Gunners taking on the champions, which would be a fantastic, a fantastic thing. Potentially for goals. I could be getting it wrong again, but I've got it wrong the last 2 seasons. So I just think it's time to change tack. Another one is take a gamble on new players. So this is where you really got to watch pre-season here. So Ibrahimovic 2016-17 got off to an absolute fly. He had pedigree behind him. We hoped he would. Michu in seasons past, great pre-season. Morata, so a much maligned Morata, but he was a key figure in that first game. He came on as a sub and he did really well against Burnley as well. But he has got pedigree. And of course, one of the best ones, the cheap ones, 2016-17, Etienne Capoue, not picked in our game week 1 scout picks, but he went on to have a great start to it was incredible, really. He was 4.5 and he was scoring practically every week. I kept benching him because I wasn't listening to the advice that something in the back of my head was saying, please play him. So these are the things I'll be looking at there. And another thing is that champions don't always prosper as well. So Chelsea lost to Burnley game week 1 last season. The year before, Leicester were absolutely awful at the start. And I don't know, I'm wondering about Man City. I just think, especially with a lot of their key players involved in the World Cup, I can't believe they're not going to score, but I just wonder if they could be a few lapses in defence there. So yeah, that's enough of my game week 1 travails. So yeah, David, what about yourself? What mistakes have you made traditionally early on? Has the fixture list given you any thoughts about how you might tackle the opening game week?
I think, you mentioned one individual there who actually I had issues with as well, and that's Etienne Capoue. And I think I'm in the past I'd been more of a kind of reserved manager who wasn't happy to just go and get someone who'd done well in game weeks 1 and 2. I remember rubbishing Leicester the year that they won the league. Obviously nobody expected them to win the league, but I said, don't. Mahrez, I think, scored a hat-trick in the first game, and I did an article, it's fine, just leave it. It was only Sunderland. I'm sure it won't happen again. And then obviously 6 months later, he'd been my captain every week. But I picked him up a bit later than I should have done. And I think, there's kind of an art to it, because it's not really a science about finding those players who perform well at the beginning and getting in there early enough to capitalise before they sort of become highly owned or just stop performing. And it is difficult because, there was every reason to believe that Capoue wouldn't continue the form that he had, and he did. Every reason to believe that Mahrez wouldn't when he was doing well, and he did not, and he didn't slow down either. But on the flip side, there have been times when I've perhaps maybe made too many changes. That's what I did at the start of this season. I think I took a -4 after game week 1. I'd done really well, but I wasn't basically why I did so well. I had Ben Davis and I had Hegazi, and I kind of looked at Hegazi's 15-point haul and thought, I got lucky there. I only stuck him in because I thought he'd play. I didn't expect that many points, and felt that my team elsewhere needed freshening up and probably made too many changes. So I guess it's because a lot of managers last year. We as we were discussing on the final Scoutcast of the season, the managers that didn't make so many changes, the managers that took less hits, tended to do better this season. Whereas in perhaps maybe previous seasons that wasn't always the case. And it's kind of made me realise that maybe even if my opening game week isn't great, giving myself a couple of extra free transfers to maybe navigate when those players sort of come out of nowhere and do well. If you've got more transfers to fit them into your team, then you're probably going to be in a stronger position.
Yeah, I think that's where that combination of looking at pre-season, focusing on the Michus, the Capoues, finding them. But it comes back to what we started with, looking at the fixtures. This is why we've done a Scoutcast now. It's such a key moment looking at the fixtures, because it helps focus your mind a bit about what you're going to be doing early on. And I'm hoping that people will take a lot of these points on board. We've got the World Cup starting today. We've got all of that. People have got their summer holidays. But come July, when the game launches and we get to see the player prices, I hope people come back to this, have a look at it, and hopefully get their thoughts together as well. I mean, just before we go, was there anything else you wanted to say about any of the fixtures that you don't think we covered? Anything about any particular teams or players that you might be going for early on?
I mean, yeah, obviously, I think the only other team to look at, I think, but it depends on a lot of what happens over the summer, is possibly Chelsea, because at the moment they're third on the season ticker, so their fixtures aren't, they're pretty good. So it's Wolves, it's Huddersfield away, Arsenal at home, Newcastle away, Bournemouth at home, Cardiff at home, West Ham away. If they've got a situation in place that works, if they bring in a manager who's kind of going to take control, they make some good signings. Or even if the situation with Conte gets resolved and it looks like Chelsea are going to do well. I mean, as you've already mentioned, of course, pre-season will be important to assess that. I think it's just worth keeping an eye on them because, I mean, they can be fantasy Premier League trolls, as we know. And I could just foresee a situation where they make an appointment that is positive, and we kind of overlook them perhaps because of some of the other things that we've already talked about, and then they do very well in the first 5-6 game weeks, and their ownership's quite low. I could see that happening because I think that's happened before with them. So it's just worth just being aware of them. But of course, you just have to kind of temper that with we don't really know what's going on yet. But I guess just track that situation. If Conte does go and they get a decent manager, then with the fixtures they've got, I think they're worth considering.
Great. Now that's good advice, because I'm thinking the same with Arsenal as well. Unknown quantity in the Premier League, could be new players coming in. Also, no Champions League. It's just, the scene is set for them to do better this year, I hope, as well. So just before we go, just wanted to give a quick reminder that we've got our season ticker up on the homepage. Have a look at that. Also, membership's now open, so if you're a member, we've got full details on the site how to be a member. There you get access to the full season ticker. It is a huge, wonderful thing to look at, but you can break it down into nice chunks, which is what we've been doing in preparation for this. And you can do all sorts of things. You can sort by difficulty in defense and attack and rotation pairings, those types of things. So that's I do advise doing that. But yes, in the meantime, though, it's goodbye from me.
Goodbye from me.
Goodbye all.